This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Indonesia. Hello, December.
Hello, Alma, and to all the televiewers. I'm December Paras of EBC Indonesia Bureau, bringing you the news and the dynamic ASEAN region. On today's headlines.
President Duterte today said those who refuse to get vaccinated against COVID-19 should just stay home or risk getting jailed and arrested.
About 24,000 people have been evacuated and 2 children killed in floods on Indonesia's Sumatra Island, officials said Tuesday, with environmental campaigners blaming deforestation for worsening the disaster.
The Department of Tourism has suspended the accreditation of a Makati hotel and revoked its permit as a multiple-use hotel for its failure to stop a guest from breaking quarantine rules.
Department of Trade and Industry Secretary Ramon Lopez is pushing for the Senate to ratify the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, agreement within the first 2 to 3 weeks of January.
First, here in the country, President Duterte on Tuesday said those who refuse to get vaccinated against COVID-19 should just stay home or risk getting jailed and arrested. Let's listen in.
Yung hindi magpabakuna at nalaman ng mga barangay captain, sabihin na lang nila, huwag kang lumabas. At kung malabas ka, you'll be escorted. If you force the issue, I said, because the barangay captain is a person in authority, he can place you under arrest and dalhin ka sa istasyon. Doon ka sa mabaho na hindi ang istasyon, hindi masyado maganda ang hygiene ng yung jail. Doon na yung mga tao kasi umiihi, doon na rin dumi-dumi. May mga estasyon na walang maniwala kayo. Kaya doon kayo ilagay ng you will be arrested. And at least I think the fiscal can hasten the proceedings by preliminary investigation na kaagad. At pagkatapos na kung i-file yan, you go straight to jail.
Metro Manila mayors agreed to pass local ordinances that will restrict the movements and activities of unvaccinated people amid a steep increase of infections in the region. The National Capital Region was placed under Alert Level 3 from January 3 to the 15th. Under Alert Level 3, Chairman Abalos said unvaccinated individuals must remain in their residences at all times except during the procurement of essential goods and services. The NCR mayors have likewise decided to prohibit the unvaccinated people in indoor and outdoor dining areas, leisure or social trips to malls, hotels, events, venues, sports and country clubs, and similar establishments. Unvaccinated people are also restricted from domestic travel via public transportation except for essential reasons like buying goods and services.
Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte ordered the Department of the Interior and Local Government to deploy at least 2 police officers in hotels used as COVID-19 quarantine facilities to prevent incidents of persons skipping their mandatory quarantine. He said hotel owners do not have the authority or power to stop people under quarantine from breaching protocols. He asked Interior Secretary Eduardo Año if it is possible to deploy at least 2 police officers in hotel quarantine facilities in 2 shifts. Take a look.
They cannot be doing the police work for the government, itong mga hotels. They cannot physically, they cannot stop. They have no authority nor the power. Ang makapahinto lang sa kanila, yung government personnel place put in there in the hotel to work. Si Secretary Anyo, Sir, kaya mo maglagay ng pulis sa mga hotels na ginagamit ng quarantine ng gobyerno, 2 pulis in 2 shifts para dyan lang.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Nag-usap na po kami ni Chief Philippine National Police General Carlos tungkol po dito. At naghanda na po sila.
He issued a statement over the reported Filipina who skipped her required quarantine period in a hotel in Berjaya, Makati Hotel to go partying in a bar in Poblacion, Makati City. The said erring individual later tested positive for novel coronavirus disease and infected several people who had close contact with her. Upon its investigation of the incident, the PNP said it will be filing charges against the 9 people, including the Filipina who violated quarantine rules, her parents, and the hotel's personnel. Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara agreed with Duterte that hotel personnel have no coercive power to stop individuals from leaving quarantine measures. However, he was quick to add the management of hotels can still be held accountable if they fail to report the authorities an individual who will leave its premises without any valid grounds.
Tama ba ako, sir?
Sir, with due respect, I can see something in the existing law, more particularly Republic Act number 11332. This is the law or act on mandatory reporting of notifiable diseases with its implementing rules and regulations, Mr. President. There is a provision there on non-cooperation as part of prohibited acts, Mr. President. And it seems to me that non-cooperation on the part of certain entities which are charged with a duty to respond to the pandemic may also be punishable. So these entities, Mr. President, may include establishments which are charged with a duty, for example, as a quarantine hotel, to ensure that people who are quarantined within the establishment should not be able to jump the quarantine regulations. So
To Thailand now, where hoteliers in Phuket are now preparing to offer hotel isolation for asymptomatic guests to keep the islands reopening operational despite a spike in Omicron infections, as more guests refuse to pay for pricey hospital beds. According to the Bangkok Post, Kongsak Kupong Sakorn, president of the Thai Hotels Association Southern Chapter, said hoteliers face obstacles in transferring their guests to hospitals. Some local hospitals lack sufficient bed capacity, while some tourists refuse hospital stays because their illness is not severe. As some Omicron cases are asymptomatic, this means certain travel insurance schemes do not cover such medical costs. Tourists are reluctant to pay a deposit of around 100,000 baht for a hospital bed in Phuket, according to Mr. Kong Sak. He also said it is important for travelers to receive proper medical treatment, but hotel operators cannot force them to go to the hospital. Hotels do not have the authority to do so, and such action could harm tourism sentiment, according to him. He also said hotel isolation could be a solution to this problem, reducing the risk of COVID patients roaming around without treatment.
And in Vietnam, bars, dance clubs, karaoke and massage parlors in Ho Chi Minh City are allowed to resume operation from January 10, 2022. The Municipal People's Committee has decided. According to VGP News, however, the service facilities shall have to comply with requirements for safe adaptation to COVID-19. All employees working at bars, dance clubs, and karaoke parlors must either be fully vaccinated or recovered from COVID-19. Meanwhile, customers must either be fully vaccinated, have recovered, or have proof of negative COVID-19 test result issued within 72 hours before visiting these places. Karaoke and massage parlors, bars, and nightclubs in the southern metropolis have been closed since April 30. HCMC has been the hardest hit locality in Vietnam since the fourth virus wave began on April 27 with nearly 505,000 infections.
Staying in Vietnam, Deputy Prime Minister Vu Doc Dam has recently signed Directive number 36CT-TTG to strengthen measures to protect and take care of children affected by the pandemic. Under the directive, the Ministry of Labor, Invalids and Social Affairs, or MOLISA, has to work with other ministries and agencies to put forth solutions to protect and take care of orphans in general and orphans caused by the pandemic. The ministry is responsible for developing a program to overcome mental and social impacts of the pandemic on children in order to ensure holistic development of children. It's also tasked to further information dissemination to promote the role of the society and residential community in protection and of taking care of the children. The ministry is also required to regularly report the outcomes of the implementation of the directive to the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health is now tasked to update instructions on COVID-19 prevention and control and accelerate vaccine rollout for children. The Ministry of Education and Training bears the responsibility for ensuring education quality and issuing guidelines for schools and families to coordinate in online learning.
The Philippine National Police Chief General Leonardo Carlos on Tuesday night directed police units to intensify the deployment of personnel to public places after the country was again classified as high risk for the coronavirus disease 2019. Starting Wednesday, the provinces of Bulacan, Cavite, and Rizal are under the stricter alert level 3 until January 15. The same template with that of Metro Manila will be implemented in those 3 areas, he added. Border checkpoints will only depend on the orders of the local government units, Carlos said. As much as possible, we want the inter-LGU travel to be free-flowing to avoid traffic congestions. But if the local chief executives will formalize their mandates when we have everything set for the checkpoint inspections, he added. Carlos also sought the public's understanding that heightened protocol policies may be inconvenient, but they have to be followed without exceptions and excuses.
Staying in the country, Dr. Edsel Salvana, a member of the Department of Health Technical Advisory Group, said that it is not true that when you catch influenza, it will cause one to get a positive RT-PCR test result. Earlier, the CDC announced that the PCR test will be removed from the list of tests under emergency use authorization because the demand for it has decreased with the authorization of other diagnostic tests and not because it confuses viruses. Experts also said the test would not show false positives for COVID-19 if the person only had the flu. Let's listen in.
There is this thing that's going around po na medyo nako-confuse kasi yung CDC daw nag-withdraw ng RT-PCR and they're saying that the RT-PCRs are no longer valid. This is fake news po, Mr. President. Next slide, please. Next slide. Ayan. So yung winidraw po ng CDC is just one brand of test po, yung brand of test that they produce. And sinabi naman po nila, they're retiring that test not because it falsely detects influenza or any other virus, but because they are focusing on other tests po. Wala po kinalaman yung ibang klaseng RT-PCR dito, and this only refers to one very specific test po. And it did not fail. This test was not unreliable. The only reason they're removing it is because they have better tests na po and they have other tests that they want to focus on. And so the confusion po kasi was that they have a new test that can also detect influenza aside from COVID po. Pero it doesn't. Yung old test po nila is really just for COVID and it does not become positive if there is the flu. Yun lang po kasi yung confusion point doon. Hindi po totoo that the influenza will give you a positive COVID test. That is fake news po. And so ang sabi rin po ng CDC, all the other tests that are on the market that are already FDA approved remain valid. And even the test that they withdrew is still valid. It does not become positive because of influenza. It only becomes positive if there is COVID po. So all the RT-PCR tests remain valid and there is no truth to the rumor that influenza will cause a positive COVID test po.
And now let's get an update on the current floods in Malaysia. Yes, joining us live is Alfred Balmes. Alfred, tell us more, please.
Hi, Alma. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Yes, in here, Malaysia, the number of flood victims in the state of Johor Bahru has increased slightly to 5,399 people from 1,430 families at 8 a.m. today, compared with 5,634 people from 1,416 families at 4 a.m. According to the State Health and Environment Committee Chairman R. Midjanantan, no new temporary relief centers, PPS, were open and that the number of centers in the state remains at 81. He added that Sigamat remains as the district with the highest number of victims with 3,804 people from 1,014 families seeking shelter at 51 PPS. Tangkak has 598 victims from 143 families in 13 PPS. Mersing with 470 victims from 125 families at 7 PPS, while 161 victims from 42 families are the 5 PPS in Muar. Kota Tinggi has 131 victims from 38 families seeking shelter at its 2 PPS. Kolang with 124 victims from 37 families at 1 PPS and 111 victims from 31 families are the 2 PPS in Batu Pahar. Bidjanatan said that the 3 rivers in Johor are still in dangerous level. According to him, the 2 rivers in Sigamat, namely Sungai Muar and Kampong Awat and Sungai Muar and Bulu Kasap, are still at the dangerous level, as well as Sungai Kesang and Kampong Sirima Amor and Tangkak, quoting the Johor Irrigation and Drainage Department. Meanwhile, a total of 9 roads in Sigamat and 1 in Muar are still closed to all vehicles. The roads that are closed in Sigamat are Jalan Kuala Raya, Balay Badang, Jalan Puting, Jalan Tumang, Jalan Sikarik, Jalan Tunggu 3, Jalan Pago, Kampong Tanjong, Jalan Sinay Gemas, and Jalan Perda Biduay. While the closed road in Muar is Jalan Muar Labes. That will be the quick update here in Malaysia, Alma.
Thank you very much, Alfred. Please stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Likewise, live reporting from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, this is Alfred Balmes. We live in interesting times.
And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. December and I will be back right after this.
Welcome back to the program. In line with Alfred Balmes' report, images of flood damages at a home in Malaysian towns Gemas and of people taking refuge at a shelter inside a school. Thousands of people have fled swamped homes as heavy rains exacerbated flooding in 7 Malaysian states, officials said on Sunday. Let's watch this.
Perasaan saya memang tak boleh nak cakap apa. Menggigil satu hari satu malam saya tak lalu makan dan saya tak boleh nak minum sebab terlalu panik sangat. Badan saya menggigil, terlalu ketakutan pun dia untuk selamatkan diri. Macam-macam perasaan saya tak boleh nak digambarkan. Terlalu takut. Saya sedih lah sebab saya tak dapat selamatkan satu benda pun. Saya alhamdulillah bersyukur sebab saya dah dapat selamatkan diri saya sendiri daripada banjir itu.
Some 50 people have been killed so far, a police Facebook post on Saturday said, with 2 still missing. The tropical Southeast Asian nation often faces stormy weather around the year's end with seasonal flooding, regularly causing mass evacuations, but authorities have been taken by surprise by the days of constant rain that began on December 17, causing rivers to overflow and inundating cities.
In neighboring Indonesia, about 24,000 people have been evacuated. 2 children killed in floods in Sumatra Island, according to officials, with environmental campaigners blaming deforestation for worsening the disaster. Torrential rains have hammered the island for days, causing rivers to burst their banks and sending water levels surging in residential areas. Take a look.
Malam, kondisinya nggak aman, nggak nyaman tidur, angin.
Ada selimut tak?
Ada selimut kain panjang.
Enggak, kita tinggal di rumah sendiri, Bang. Cuma kita buat apa nih? Seperti para-para kayak gitu kan.
Di atas atap gitu?
Di atas atap, Bang.
Oh, gitu.
Jadi barang lah cuma kita terendam ya. Biasalah, Bang. Pokoknya kan kita selamat dulu. Utamakan kan nyawa kita, Bang. dalam bang itu ketinggiannya sekitar seleher lah bang.
Leher.
Jadi kita tuh susah untuk transportasi susah bang. Jadi sedangkan kami aja nih jalan susah.
And still in Indonesia, the health ministry says the booster or third doses of the COVID-19 vaccine will be rolled out for the public from January 12. Authorities said free booster vaccines, which will be provided under government subsidies, will be given to fund assistance recipients, especially the elderly. Those who are not eligible for free booster vaccines will be able to get booster doses at health facilities by shelling out around 300,000 rupiah. Health Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin said that as many as 21 million Indonesians are eligible for the booster vaccinations that will commence on January 12. According to the minister, the booster vaccines will be given to people age 18 and above in accordance with the World Health Organization's recommendation. The minister affirmed that booster vaccination will target districts and cities where vaccination coverage has reached 70% for the first dose and 60% for the second dose.
And a handful of Myanmar nurses hiding from the junta have been risking arrest by running makeshift clinics to treat COVID patients and resistance fighters with medicines smuggled past military checkpoints. The country's healthcare workers have found themselves at the forefront of a civil disobedience movement against the February coup and a crackdown on dissent that has killed more than 1,300 people. Let's take a look.
CDM လောက်တုန်းကဒီလက်ကောမှာရှိတဲ့ CDM တွေစုထားပြီးတော့ဗောနော်ပရာဟိတအတင်ဖွဲ့ထားတာရှိတယ်အမှဝင်လောက်တယ်ဝင်လောက်ရင်လည်းတိုက်ပွဲစခါကျတော့ဒီဖက်မှာဆရာဝန်ရောကျမကြီးဝန်ထမ်းကအားနေတယ်လို့ဒီဖက်ကအဖို့ဖားတွေကပြောတာပေါ့ပြောခါကျတော့ရနိုင်မလားဆရာဝန်ခေါ်လာပေးလို့ရမလားဆိုတော့တိုက်ပွဲစချင်မှာကအရင်ခက်ခဲတယ်ခေါ်လာပေါ့ခက်ခဲခါကျတော့စေအိတ်အရင်ရှာတယ်ရှာပြီးဆရာဝန်ရှာလို့မတွေ့ခါကျတော့ကိုယ်တိုင်တက်လာလိုက်တယ်ဟုတ်အောက်ဆီဂျင်ဆိုရင်လည်းရှိတဲ့ဟာလေးနဲ့ပဲရတလောက်ပေါ့လောက်ရတယ်ခက်ခက်ခဲလိုက်ကိုထိပြန်သွားတွင်းရတာပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒါဟာကျတော့ပစ္စည်းတွေကအစအမှန်ဆိုရင်တစ်ခါသုံးပစ္စည်းဆိုရင်လည်းကျမတို့က recycle ပြန်လုပ်ရတယ်ဒီပြန်လန်းနဲ့ပုတ်သက်စီပြန်ပြီးတော့ပြန်သုံးရတဲ့အတွက်ခက်ခဲတော့ပေါ့
ဘောနော်ဒီစိတ်ကာလမှာကကြာစိတ်ရှောင်တွေကလည်းမတွေ့စိတ်တွေပါတာရှောင်ရကကြတော့လူကပေါင်းစုံပြီလေလူကတရွာနဲ့တရွာပြီးလို့ရှိလူကတော်စုံနေအကြောင်းအခါကြလေတချို့ကကြတော့လေအမစိတ်ရှောင်ရင်းနဲ့ပိုတော့တော်တွေ့ပေါ့ไม่ก็ถือก็ถืออยู่ตรงนี้อันนี้
Bangladesh authorities have bulldozed more than 3,000 Rohingya run shops Since last month, a government official confirmed Tuesday as struggling refugee families voiced their dismay at the demolitions. About 850,000 members of the stateless Muslim minority are packed into overcrowded displacement camps in Bangladesh, most having fled neighboring Myanmar after a 2017 military clampdown that prompted an international genocide investigation. Bangladesh has been praised for taking in the refugees, but rights groups have criticized restrictions placed on the refugees, most recently a drive to knock down makeshift shops that serve their communities. The country's Deputy Refugee Commissioner Shamsuddouza told AFP that more than 3,000 illegal shops had been demolished. But Kin Mong, a Rohingya community leader and rights activist, told AFP the demolitions had already hurt tens of thousands of refugees in the camps. Saad Hamadi of Amnesty International said the move would leave refugees vulnerable to exploitation and worsen conditions in the camps. Hamadi urged authorities to protect the rights and dignity of the Rohingya refugees by involving them in the decisions, including their rights to earn a living.
Back here in the country, the Supreme Court has extended work suspension in its offices until January 8 to allow testing of its personnel. In Memorandum Order 3-2022, released on Wednesday, the High Court said this is to pave the way for massive antigen testing and contact tracing. Citing the latest report of its medical and dental services, the Supreme Court said antigen testing on all court personnel, as well as employees of its service providers, has not yet been completed, and that there's a high positivity rate among those already tested. Personnel of the Office of the Bar Chair and Office of the Bar Confidant involved in the 2020 to 2021 bar examination and personnel of the Judicial Records Office involved in e-filing are still required to report on-site, according to the court. The court earlier ordered the 3-day work suspension from Monday to Wednesday, except for key personnel and those taking part in the vaccination booster program on Monday and the ANBank session on Tuesday. In a separate memorandum, the Office of the Court Administrator announced a new work arrangements in the provinces of Bulacan, Cavite, and Rizal after these provinces were also placed under Alert Level 3. From January 5 to 15, courts and judicial offices in these provinces shall maintain a skeleton workforce of at least 30% to a maximum of 50%. Regular office hours, meanwhile, will be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. with Saturday duty suspended.
The Department of Tourism has suspended the accreditation of a Makati hotel and revoked its permit as a multiple-use hotel for its failure to stop a guest from breaking quarantine rules. Berjaya Makati Hotel was also fined equivalent to twice the rack rate of its most expensive room, the Department of Tourism said in its news release on Wednesday. The DOT's Tourism Regulation, Coordination, and Resource Generation approved the penalties recommended by the DOT National Capital Region. The case stemmed from the actions of returning Filipino Gwyneth Chua, identified on social media as Poblacion Girl, because she was seen in Poblacion, Makati City when she was supposed to be in the hotel undergoing quarantine. Berjaya, in their reply dated January 1, admitted that CCTV footage showed Chua leaving the hotel at 11:45 in the evening, or 15 minutes after checking in upon her arrival on December 22. Neither the hotel security personnel nor the front lobby called her attention, and neither was there any effort to report the incident to the Bureau of Quarantine. Even after her return 3 days later, she was later seen in social media posts at a bar in Poblacion. Chua was booked for a mandatory 5-day quarantine at the hotel until December 27. Later returned on the night of December 25. She underwent a swab test on December 26. Her result came out positive the next day. A copy of the decision was served to Berjaya Hotel, which has 15 working days to appeal it. In their letter dated December 28, Berjaya even gave the assurance that quarantine guests follow strict protocols. However, Berjaya later apologized in news reports and social media for their failure to report the quarantine skipping incident to the BOQ. The statements and public apology made by the hotel management were an admission of not just the facts of the incident, but as well as their lapses in their responsibility as an accredited establishment of the Department of Tourism, the decision read. The news continues in the ASEAN in Focus. Alma and I will be right back.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Masarap naman talaga minsan yung walang ginagawa.
Boring!
Ito ang board.
Pag pinatay, mainit. Pag binuhay, malamig.
Just do it kasi.
Tulugan ang problema.
Siguradong hindi kayo mabubore dahil meron tayong say what?
Hirap naman ito.
For someone na walang utak, ang lakas mo mag-overthink.
Huwag kasi masyado pag-isipan.
Hindi na tayo magkipag-video calls sa hindi natin jowa.
Pogi ba hanap mo?
Teka lang, naiyak ako.
Funniest Nakaball Videos!
Welcome back. The Philippines' economic outlook for this year remains rosy. Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship and Go Negosyo founder Joey Concepcion said during the Laging Handa public briefing. Concepcion remains optimistic despite the spike of COVID cases following the holidays and the presence of the Omicron variant. Let's listen in.
What I can assure you that I think I'm extremely bullish. I'm very bullish that 2022 will be definitely a much better year than 2021. Why? We have the vaccines. It's now here in our country. Ang dami nito. Now, dati last year wala tayong bakuna, kulang bakuna, maraming delay. Pero ngayon, we have the ammunition. Number two, ang kalaban natin yung mga vaccine hesitant. So, itong ginawa ng mga IATF, mandating on-site workers to take the vaccine or else they will have to take the RT-PCR test will cost them 70,000 pesos. And the Metro Manila Mayor, sana sumunod dito sa buong bansa natin yung mga governors who are now going to restrict the movement of the unvaccinated. So that is great news kasi mapupuwersi sila kumuha ng bakuna or else they will not be able to go out of their house. No? So strictly speaking, and that's what they're doing to try to protect them. So we are now pushing hard on really getting the people vaccinated. And okay, it is maybe more pressure kasi kailangan natin yan. We want to end this pandemic this year in 2022 para at least yung mga negosyante at yung business natin ay umunlad para makatulong dito sa government sa pagbayad ng mga buwis nila at the government can continue to fund yung vaccines. You know, the government cannot sustain buying the vaccines for its people forever, no? This is going to be a huge, huge budget. But for the time being, while this pandemic is on, it has no choice. But eventually, this will have to go back to the private sector, no? Us buying the vaccines. So we will have to have a vibrant economy to be able to afford buying these vaccines, no?
The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas announced on Tuesday that the Philippines has renewed its bilateral swap agreement with Japan. In a statement, the BSP said the renewed bilateral swap arrangement, or BSA, will be effective January 1, 2022. The BSA is a two-way arrangement where both authorities can swap their local currencies in exchange for the US dollar. The arrangement also enables the Philippines to swap the Philippine peso against the Japanese yen. The Bank of Japan, acting as agent for the Minister of Finance of Japan, and the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas signed the Third Amendment and Restatement Agreement of the Third BSA, the BSP said. The size of the BSA remains unchanged, that it is up to 12 billion, or its equivalent in Japanese yen for the Philippines, and $500 million for Japan. The BSP said the renewed BSA incorporates amendments to align the BSA with the recent amendments to the Chiang Mai Initiative Multilateralization, or CMIM, agreement. The Japan-Philippines BSA was first launched as a one-way BSA in August 2001, which then developed into a two-way second BSA under the CMIM in May 2006. The BSA is seen to help both countries by limiting foreign exchange risks